Hello, welcome to History Laid Bare. I am the Bear. Slightly different video from what we usually do on this channel. I would like to review a movie scene with you. And this is a movie scene from The King. Now, a couple of things to note before we continue. I am not that critical when it comes to films. As long as I've had a good time, I see them as good movies. And what I seek in historical films is I want the feel to be there, which is kind of a contradiction because we can't know what it was like to live in that time period. However, I like it if I get a sense of what the time period is from a film. I don't necessarily care if films are inaccurate, although there is a line to that. Braveheart it's a great film, but my God, some of the inaccuracies. So, let's take a look. In this scene, we see Henry Hotspur, who is played by Tom Glen Carney. Hotspur was his nickname because he was always excited and wanted to get going. He's accepted a duel from Henry, who would go on to be Henry V. Henry V in this film is played by the brilliant Timothée Chalamet, who I hear is a real champion of opera and ballet. He can't do enough for the industries and he loves advertising. First thing that I really love about this scene is we see that Hotspur is a noble. He has been waiting on hand and foot since the moment that he is born. He doesn't even look to see if the man next to the horse is handing him the sword. He just expects it to be handed to him, like a true noble would. Just look at the colouring on Hotspur's armour here. Movies do get a lot of flack when they're set in the medieval era, and this movie rarely shows colour, but the armour here is quite colourful and I like it, even though it's muted colours, because the medieval world was filled with colour. We think of it as this dark, grungy, like castle walls and stuff like that, but the medieval people loved colour. Dyes were expensive and it was a way to show off one's wealth, and you can see that in Hotspur's armour here. And the visor of the helm is put down. Depending on what helmet you would be wearing, visibility would be very hard to see out of it. It's kind of a drawback, isn't it? You want to be protected, but you also want to be able to fight. Unfortunately, having this much armor on means that the visibility is very enclosed. You've got less visibility than a horse, really. You know, when they have those blinders on when they're racing. And now we see Henry approach. And what I like to think about in this moment of watching the film is medieval people believed in the Catholic faith. Believed is probably the wrong word. They knew for certain that God exists. They were brought up in this religion from the day they are born till the day that they pass away. They know that there is a God. So perhaps they would say a prayer for themselves, praying for strength from Archangel Michael, or praying for the soul of the enemy that they're about to kill. And I don't know, dear listeners, if you've ever been in a violent situation. I pray that you haven't. But that moment before where the body is fueled with pure adrenaline and you can hear your heart beating in your head, one can only imagine what it was like for people then. One of these men are going to die. It's a good time to mention, actually, this duel never happened. Hotspur died in the Battle of Shrewsbury in 1403. This is just for the point of the movie. But it must have been terrifying, those seconds. And these two men know one of them is going to die here. And then we see the circling, the trying to figure out each other out, almost trying to manipulate the situation even before it starts, trying to see your enemy's weaknesses, their strengths. And this is the pause that I was talking about before the battle begins. This is the moment when one of them has to decide, I'm going to move first. And that first blow is an indication of strength. If you've ever been unlucky enough to find yourself in a fight before, that first punch flown is either a, oh, okay, this person isn't that strong, or, oh, God, I just felt my teeth rattle. And that first moment of clashing of swords, that must be an indication of, I'm either in trouble or I can do this. And then we see where this fight was always destined to end up. I don't think, from what I've read, swords were the most practical thing to fight against somebody in full-plated armor. There are weapons out there, such as a mace or a spike on the end of an axe, which would act as like a tin opener. But with a sword, I feel like you are looking for the bits in between the armor. And that is obviously very hard to do when your opponent is also looking for the tiny gaps in your armor. So eventually, this is where the fight is always going to end up. It's going to end up in a wrestling match. And let's not forget, this armor is heavy. And you're not going to be able to fight for long periods of time. You're going to be exhausted out, perhaps after even about 5 minutes. And we've all seen what boxers do when they're tired or they want to stop a blow coming to them. They clench or clutch, or the grabbing, trying to get hold of an arm so it can't punch you. Except in this case, there is no ref to stop it. You are clinging to your opponent because you're tired and you're exhausted, but you also want it to come to an end. And your opponent is also doing that. And the breath and the sounds in this scene and the clinking of armor, I think it's just wonderful to highlight that. Because I don't know if you've ever seen us men in the gym, but we never do any physical activity without noise. No. When I lift a dumbbell, it sounds like a walrus stretching in the morning. And that must have gone twofold when you're battling a man trying to out strength him. You're trying to get the better of him. Not much to say here. I'm glad that they rode closer because I had no idea how they were going to see the outcome from the other side of the field. I like the fact they also show the grasping of the blade in order to get purchase, in order to have strength to manipulate your enemy. I used to study jiu-jitsu when I was a child, and there's this thing called I think it's called a Joe. I remember it being a Joe. And the first time I was handed it, I tried to use it like Darth Maul, you know, that scene in The Phantom Menace. And then my teacher, sensei, turned to me and said, "You've got a long stick, use all of the stick." And that's basically the same principle of sword. The whole sword is a weapon, not just the blade. The handle can be used as a weapon. Any part of that sword can be designed to inflict punishment on your enemy. Also, the realism of how awkward a fight in full armor would have been, the tripping over each other, the just trying to throw yourself forward because you're that exhausted. It's that thing, isn't it? How you, if you ever had an argument with somebody and you imagine saying afterwards, you imagine saying the perfect thing at the perfect time. We all know life doesn't happen that way. And you can plan a fight however you like, but it's like in Kingdom Come Deliverance, Henry Scallott's, his I forget his father's name. He turns to him and says, I could spend loads of time teaching you how to use a sword, and you might get hit by an arrow. Life doesn't happen the way you think it does, and fights are not choreographed, and they are awkward, and they are wrestling matches, even without weapons. Have you ever seen two men fight in a pub? It's not fisticuffs, it's scrapping and mauling and yeah, like I said, wrestling. And it's awkward. You might trip over a bar stool. You might trip over a chair. You might fall into a door. And then we see Henry deliver the killing blow with a small dagger which goes in between the chainmail and the helmet, between the space between the helmet and the chest plate. We try to distance ourselves from history because we see it as barbaric. However, I don't think there was a time when taking another person's life was a small thing. And we can only imagine, if we come out of this battle for a moment, what it must have been like if you've killed one man and now you have to move on to the next. Life in the medieval era was violent. There were moments of peace, there were quiet days. However, there were moments of sheer brutality, and this is one of them. This has been History Laid Bare, the Bear Reviews Scenes. I hope you enjoyed that. I know I did, because it was another excuse for me to watch The King. I don't see this video doing particularly well. That's why I kind of just talked, really, and talked about what I found interesting about the scene. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. I may do others, but let's see how this video turns out. No, actually, sorry, scrap that. I will do others, because I enjoyed doing that. That was nice. I do listen to a lot of movie reviews and stuff like that, so yeah. Thank you for listening.